You're listening to Whoa! Potluck.
And welcome to Books and Boba, a book club and podcast featuring books by Asian and Asian American authors. My name is Marvin Yue.
And I'm Rira Yu.
And we are here to discuss our March 2025 book club pick, The Stationery Shop by Marjan Kamali. As always, Books and Boba is supported in part by our listeners. So if you enjoy what we do here at the book club and would like to become a bigger part of it, head on over to patreon.com/booksandboba, where as a Patreon supporter of Books and Boba, you could gain access to our members only Discord server, as well as bonus podcasts if you support at the Honey Boba level. We've been doing some really cool stuff there and been really enjoying our conversations with our book club members in real time about our book club picks. So would love to see more of you there. And again, thank you to all of you who have supported us so far.
Yeah, so The Stationery Shop was a book that's been on my TBR pile for a really long time. And I know that it was a book that our Patreon members recommended a long time ago. And it just so happened that timing and taste-wise, I was like, okay, it's time to read this book.
All right. Before we get into our discussion, just a quick standard spoiler warning. For our book club discussions, we do discuss all aspects of a book's plot, including character details, secrets, and twists. So if you have not finished reading the book and don't want to be spoiled on any developments, this is your opportunity to hit pause and then come back to listen to our discussion after you finish the book yourself. The story does contain a lot of asymmetrical information and information that the characters don't learn until much later. So we definitely do recommend that you finish reading the book before listening to our discussion. I also wanted to flag some content warnings for our upcoming discussion. This book does contain mentions of child loss, emotional abuse, and suicidal ideation. So if any of that is triggering for you, please proceed with caution. But yeah, let's get into it. Rira, let's start off our book club discussion, as always, with the book jacket description.
Roya, a dreamy, idealistic teenager living amid the political upheaval of 1953 Tehran, finds a literary oasis in kindly Mr. Fakhri's neighborhood stationery shop, stocked with books and pens and bottles of jewel-colored ink. Then Mr. Fakhri, with a keen instinct for a budding romance, introduces Roya to his other favorite customer, handsome Bahman, who has a burning passion for justice and a love for Rumi's poetry. And she loses her heart at once. Their romance blossoms and the little stationery shop remains their favorite place in all of Tehran. A few short months later, on the eve of their marriage, Roya agrees to meet Bahman at the town square when violence erupts, a result of a coup d'etat that forever changes their country's future. In the chaos, Bahman never shows. For weeks, Roya tries desperately to contact him, but her efforts are fruitless. With a sorrowful heart, she moves on to college in California, to another man, to a life in New England, until more than 60 years later, an accident of fate leads her back to Bahman and offers her a chance to ask him questions that have haunted her for more than half a century. Why did you leave? Where did you go? How is it that you were able to forget?
Yeah, so immediately I think our book club members clocked that like this is giving a lot of like past lives vibes, especially in that first chapter where you find out that she has like a, takes place in 2013, 60 years after she was stood up in that square, and she is going to meet for the first time in 60 years her old flame, being driven there by her well-meaning white husband. And I think I think it's really interesting that because this book came out, when did this book come out? Like
2019.
Yeah, so before Past Lives, but because I've seen Past Lives now, I have like that that framing of like this type of relationship, right?
I feel like this frame of relationship has been prevalent in literature for a while because it's pretty much second chance romance, and I love books that have like a bookshop or like the love of books as like one of the I guess like motifs in the story. So I was like, okay, I'm in. But when Marvin told me that it was giving past lives feeling, I was like, oh no, did not like that movie. So, because second chance romance is a little bit tricky because it has to be like if it didn't work out in the beginning of like the course of their relationship, then like why would it work out now? So it's like circumstances, it depends on like what the relationship was in the beginning. And in past lives, I was like, I don't know, there wasn't really that much of a strong foundation, but in this book, they were actually engaged or supposed to get married. So there's a little bit more stakes involved.
Yeah, I think, I don't know if we want to touch on this so early because I think this idea of discussing the second chance romance, or I don't even think it's a second chance romance. It's more
I would say the romance is like it's a part of the story, but it's not the entire story. This is like coming of age story.
Yeah, and it definitely, in our Discord discussion with our book club members, we were maybe a little divided on whether or not we bought the romance or whether it was, it was like, because I also have the same kind of issues with second chance romance, which is if it didn't work out the first time, like chances are there's a reason for that, especially because when their initial romance took place in 1953, which a lot of this book takes place in. And they were like, what, 17, 18?
It was very like Romeo and Juliet vibes,
Yeah. And it's like a lot of the reasons their romance didn't work out were like red flags that was there from the beginning, as someone who's like 40 years old. And like, I'm not a cynic. I do believe in like true love and stuff. But like, I also believe that like when you're 18, you might not know exactly what it is you want to need.
For the people who have been watching the drama When Life Gives You Tangerines, starring IU and Park Bo-gum, this is like the opposite of that. It's like, oh yeah, like in When Life Gives You Tangerines, it's like when the romance works out, like when two childhood lovers, two young lovers, they like make the jump and they're like, screw the family, what they think, we're gonna like make it work. And it's about like just getting through life. There's like no villains. It's just, just the hardships and like the sweetness and bittersweetness of life. I'm not sure if I'm doing justice for describing that drama, but it's pretty much the opposite of that because it doesn't work out between these two lovers. And there is like a very bittersweet tone throughout this book. And I know that's like not some people's cup of tea because it's like not like super dramatic, and it's like you're suddenly feeling like, I mean, it's dramatic in terms of like politics, but what I mean is like, I don't know, like how would I describe this book? It's very deep, it's very rich, and the pacing, I can see people being a little bit frustrated if they're like very plot driven readers, but I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I feel like for me, it's more like the entire. So like, yeah, we're jumping around, but essentially like the reason their relationship doesn't work out is because of factors outside of their control, and the fact that they had no agency, and the fact that like we're led to believe that this relationship between Roya and Bachman were like this. It was like their one true love. They're soulmates. They're like the one, not even the one that got away, but the one that like they're meant to be with. And it's like she spends the entire book pining for that. And I think maybe this is just, I would have rather the twist that like they were broken up by outside forces, which it was definitely foreshadowed, right? But like the fact that that was what happened, like the core reason they didn't end up together is because of a misunderstanding on both parts. And like I felt like that made their pining and they're like being hung up on it a little frustrating, because it's like you just had to talk to each other.
Yeah, I know that's like a trope that I usually really hate. It's like, if these characters just freaking talk to each other, have like an honest conversation, all of the problems would be solved right now.
Yeah, because like I know I kind of poo-pooed on young love, but like it's not that I don't believe in love, and like I think my conceptualization of like what makes a relationship work it actually goes back to a show that I used to really love called Scrubs. It's a 2000s medical comedy, but there's this one episode in season 1 where JD and Elliot, the main characters, get together for the first time. And if you know like early aughts, like sitcoms, like the main characters, they never stay together until like the very last season. So like the show tries a way to break them up. But what made Scrubs interesting was they did the whole thing. They didn't drag it out like multiple episodes. It all happened in one episode. They got together in one episode, they broke up in one episode. And the entire episode is kind of talking about the scope of their relationship and why just wasn't meant to work out. And there's this one speech by Dr. Cox, played by John C. McGinley, that I've co-opted as like my philosophy in like what makes a relationship work, which is like if two people are meant to be together, one of them will always fight for that relationship. Like one of them will say something, one of them will like make the effort, right?
Like you'll always have a spine, you know?
Yeah. And I did not see that for these two. Like it really felt like, and we can get into like the myriad reasons why they didn't work out, but like they saw an obstacle and gave up.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously more nuance to that, but yeah, essentially, they could have stood up against a lot of the obstacles that come their way, but you know, for one reason or another, they don't stand up for the occasion. I really liked how the book is framed. It begins with Roya being 77 years old, and she's at this senior like care center, this nursing home, to meet Bahman after like 60 years. And it's like, you know, as the reader, that this did not work out and that she's with somebody else and she's had this full life, and so has he. And just going off from there, I'm like, yeah, like you still get very invested in their relationship, in their romance, even though you know like it's not going to work out. And so it's kind of like a ticking clock, but at the same time, you don't really I didn't really like feel dread or anything. I was like, oh, okay, like let's enjoy the moment. Let's enjoy this budding romance. And I really like the fact that it took place in 1953 Tehran, because it's so different from what Iran is now. And just the fact that like I read an interview with the author Marjan Kamali saying how in those chapters, when she's writing like the 1953 chapters, she said that in her mind she kind of like imagined everything in Farsi. So when she's like writing, she's kind of like translating from like the mother tongue to English. And you can really tell there's something like really poetic about the prose in those like old chapters compared to like the California chapters and the New England chapters.
Yeah. I mean, this book is one part romance, like second chance romance, doomed romance, and one part historical fiction. And I actually did really enjoy the historical fiction parts of it, like exploring 1950s Tehran, and just reminding ourselves that like the Middle East in the early 1900s was like they were moving towards a more egalitarian type of society, right? They were moving away from religious fundamentalism, more towards democracy. One of the central conflicts in that section of the book is like this emerging tension between the Shah, which is like the conservative monarchy, and the prime minister, who is trying to move the country towards a democracy that's not reliant on Western powers, which, you know, by then, which, you know, would have made him an enemy of the CIA, right? Yeah, it was really cool to see, like, you know, I really enjoyed the scenes with Roya and Zari's dad. He was, you know, he's a man who, you know, is trying his best to bring about this new world for his daughters, right? He's like the consummate girl dad. He wants his girls to be successful. He still has the Asian parent thing, like, you're going to be a doctor, or you're going to be a scientist, you're going to be a writer. But like he is full into this, like, empowering his daughters to be more than like wives and mothers.
Yeah, and right? It was really like a time where everybody felt like Iran was going through, like it was gonna, everybody could feel that it was on the precipice of change. So there is like So there was like a lot of political activism, and you have a lot of young activists who are like, yeah, we're going to change the world, which kind of introduces us to Bachman, who is described as the boy who will change the world. But another reason why I really like the fact that the book takes place in 1953 Tehran is I feel like in past books where it was set in Iran, or or we have like Iranian American immigrants, it was because they fled Iran in 1979 during the big Iranian revolution. So this is before the great like migration in a way. And it kind of shows that like history repeats itself in a way. It's like revolutions start, die, and then a new generation comes. And it seems like there's always like the same problem. And people pass the torch to the next generation because the older generation's like tired of fighting and they feel very like disillusioned by change.
And I think Marjan did a really good job illustrating that, like that, you know, in the backdrop of this like love story, and especially in the first part, there was this political tension. You mentioned that you didn't really feel the dread. I like, you know, I agree with you. Like, we already knew this relationship was doomed, so it's kind of like, okay, let's enjoy. Like, I was kind of treating it as like a mystery. Like, how does this thing fall apart, right? And then we see red flags everywhere, all around them. But the dread of like the political situation is becoming more and more untenable. I did feel that, and that did like add to like the tension of the whole situation.
Yeah, it was definitely like bubbling in the background, and maybe that's why I didn't really feel like the dread, and I was like enjoying the romance part of it because I was like, this is in the background. Like, eventually everything is going to bubble up to the surface and just like spill over. But at this moment, let's just enjoy this romance, which is the complete opposite of my personality. So great job to Marjan for getting me to focus so much on these two teenagers.
Yeah, and it was definitely it was a sweet romance, right? You know, she's the working class or the daughter of a civil servant, and he's the son of an engineer, which I think both kind of qualify as middle class, right? But one is like upper middle class, one is like lower middle class.
Has kind of like elite pedigree because his dad is from like a wealthier family with like generations of wealth. So yeah, I think the thing is, it's really easy to look back on past generations and be like, oh, why can't you just like stand up to your family? But we can't judge them by the standards of today. It's like a different culture. It's a different time. And like back then, like marriage was truly a union between two families, and, you know, castes and classism. That was like much more of an obstacle than it is today.
Yeah, but you did want to root for them, right? Like, I love that this has the hallmarks of a lot of like, I don't know what the term is, but like love between classes, right? Like, he's taking to her all these fancy parties where she kind of feels out of place. He has a lot of rich friends being snooty at her. Like, you know, it's definitely it's not Cinderella. It's yeah, I'm not sure what if there is a term. I'm sure there is a romance term for it. I'm just not well versed in it. But you know, like we start to see that like as the romance grows, you know, you see her being uncomfortable with like being this close to all these like elites, but also convincing herself that it'll be worth it because her love with Bachman is true. Like, they're meant to be, right? They're each other's destiny. Destiny is a big theme, at least within the characters of this book, right?
It's also very cultural because in Iranian culture, at least at this time, they believe that everyone's fates are written in invisible ink on their forehead. Whereas like in America, there's like this myth that you can be anything you want to be as long as you work hard. So you have like these two totally different ideologies.
Yeah. But in addition to like kind of being a fish out of water in like those elite circles, like I think the biggest obstacle for the romance is Bachman's mother, Badri, who, at least in our discussion on Discord, we're a little divided on whether or not we're like, just there's a good number of our members who find themselves sympathizing and being on her team. Whereas like, and then I think we can discuss this later, but I'm like, no, this woman's like, sure, she's had a hard life and she obviously has things that she needs to like work through. But this woman literally made her teenage breakup everyone's problem.
It's okay to be sympathetic to an unlikable character and also hold them accountable for the misdeeds that they inflict on other people. That's just my opinion. I think, you can be an asshole with mental illness. The mental illness, you can understand, but it doesn't justify being an asshole. That's just my personal take on it.
Yeah. And I mean, we can talk about it because like she is not Bakma and Roya's biggest fan, right? Like one of the character traits that Roya first notices about Bakma, he's very devoted to his family, very devoted to his mom, right? Like him and his father they're constantly appeasing her because, she has mood swings. She obviously has some form of like
bipolar disorder, right? Or borderline personality disorder, along with trauma. We'll get to the trauma later. But yeah, like you have Bahman and his father who are kind of the opposite of what the patriarchal rules are in society because they take care of the housework. They're very, very understanding. And, they seem to respect women a great deal more than some of their peers. So yeah, like it's just like, wow, like green flag of a guy, but a red flag of a mother.
Yeah. But also, I mean, and I know that like, at least from anecdotal experience, like Persian mama's boys is a thing in like, dating circles is a thing.
It's also a thing in East Asian circles, but yeah.
Yeah. Like, I don't know if you read it this way, but like, to me, like the moment the mom showed up, like, to me, that was like, okay, this is the reason they're not together anymore. He chose, like, to me, I thought he chose his mom over his soulmate, which, I'm glad that's not how it turned out, but also kind of how it turned out. And also more frustrating. That's not how it turned out.
Yeah, I mean, like the son siding with his mother over his wife is a tale as old as time. Like I've seen it so many times, not just in dramas, but in real life. And it's just so frustrating, because it's like filial piety goes only so far, it's like you're creating a new family with the partner that you chose. And if you don't have the spine to protect them and to stand up against like your parents, then I'm like, what the hell are you doing? Why are you with this person? Shouldn't this person be like the most important person in your life? Like, and then like a lot of moms, or at least like in Korean culture, a lot of moms like really raise their sons to be like the vessel of just like all their emotional support. It's like they're so disappointed by the lack of support from their husbands, so they pour everything into their sons. And when their sons find like a girlfriend or like a wife, there's like instant jealousy and there's always like some friction involved. That's usually like, I guess, the trope with mother-in-laws versus daughter-in-law. So yeah, right when Badri showed up, I was like, yes, this is the reason why. I don't exactly know how they get there with the breakup, but this woman is definitely a main reason why they break up.
Yeah. And, Marjan does dedicate the first chapter part 2 or part 3 about her story with Mr. Fakhri, who is the owner of the stationery shop. That colors in a lot of the interactions that we've seen in part 1, where she's just kind of just mean to everybody, especially Mr. Fakhri and Roya, right? Just never a good word, always cold, and just there's that scene where they're at their engagement party, and this is kind of the last time Roya and Bahman see each other, and like it's like a hot day, and she's wearing just like too many clothes, right? And just like
she's dressed like she's going to a funeral, she's dressed in all black, and it's their engagement party. It's her son's engagement party, her only child's engagement party, and she is just they show up late. She's showing no respect to like her like soon to be additional family members. And everybody is like, she's one of those people who just wants to climb up the social ladder and want to maintain wealth. And she's disappointed that her son is not marrying the girl that she chose. And it's just, I'm like, okay, lady, get over it.
I think throughout this, especially this later part of part one, I was with Roya's sister. Dude, you can do better. Like, I don't know, like, sure, you love this boy and this boy is like really cool, but like, are you really going to spend the rest of your life appeasing his mom? Because that's what's going to be. Like, it's
Okay,
going to be
but
a forever fight between you and his mom.
But Zari did not like Bahman even before Badri came into the picture. Because Zari is like, why are you getting with this political activist? Don't you know, like, they care so much about their cause that, like, they're going to choose the cause over you and put you in danger. Like, it's not worth it. And she was kind of like a typical bratty younger sister, but her intentions were good. And, you know, even and like after the breakup, like I'm like, can you not read the room? Your sister is like devastated. She's like, yeah, get over him. Like, it'll be fine. Finally, you can get over him because now you're dating this new guy. And it's like, not the best way.
To be fair, Roya was like, she is definitely like the head in the cloud type of like, she's just very, I don't know if idealistic's the right word, but like I
mean, the summary says idealistic.
Believes in, yeah. So, I mean, she believes in true love, romance. She probably honestly believes like she let her true love get away, or her true love betrayed her and nothing will ever be the same again. And she does go through her own personal traumas too later on. And like, she's definitely someone who, I don't know what her birthday is, but like what I assume is what a Pisces is, where it's like very emotional, very like in her feelings, right? And like she doesn't get over things easily. I think an interesting thing that I was thinking about earlier is like, it's really easy to say that like all these people just need therapy, but you also have to remember like she's like 70 something in 2013. Like these are like people are not even our grandparents' age, like it's our parents' older siblings' age, right? And like if our parents are like not into therapy, their seniors definitely were still not into therapy for sure, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I thought like setting the book in 2013 was great because that's the year when like all of the files from CIA became like available, right? About like the Iranian Revolution and how America like totally fucked up Iran along with like the Brits, and how they like how they helped out with the coup d'etat back in like the 50s. I'm like, yo, like really, like, I mean, there were like suspicions, like the characters in like the 1950s chapters are like, yeah, I mean, I feel like the Americans are like involved somehow, and turns out their paranoia was correct. And I thought it was like a really clever decision to set the present day chapters in 2013.
Yeah. So what did you think about the climax of the first part, which is they're going out, they're going to get married in a civil ceremony. Like he wrote her a letter, meet me at this square. And then he doesn't show up, but at the square, the protest foments, right? And she gets caught in the middle of it. And as a result, Mr. Fakhri gets shot by a soldier, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Definitely like a heightened dramatic climax for like this like initial part, right? Like it's the type of like confluence of events that can only
happen during this time.
Really be possible during this time in a historical fiction where like your characters are caught in the middle of like history, right?
Yeah, and I just freaking knew because when they're separated, like Roya thinks it's because of political reasons. Like she thinks that Bahman had to like lay low because the policemen who are, you know, on the Shah's side is like hunting down people who are involved in, who are like siding with the prime minister. And she's like, okay, well, he has to stay down on, like, he has to be inconspicuous. He has to kind of like lay low for a while. So we're going to communicate through letters that are snuck in between pages of books that Mr. Fakhri is like delivering in between them along with like their friends, like Jahangir. And I was like, oh, I just know that someone is going to forge a letter. Someone is going to like switch the letters. Like, I don't know. Like, letters are just not not reliable.
I think this is central to my frustration with both of them, which is like they've been exchanging letters to each other for weeks at this point throughout the summer. And then the last letter, maybe not this one, maybe not the one where they say to meet me at the certain square, but the one afterwards, the one after everything goes down and she receives a letter of him like breaking up with her. And to her, it's like, this is so out of character, right? This doesn't sound like the same person wrote these letters, which is true. She was smart enough to figure that out, but not smart enough or not convicted enough in her love, at least in my opinion, to like confirm that, right? Like,
well, also it's like the timing of the letters too. She's like, well, for this letter to come to me right now, it means that he like wrote this like right after or like around the same time as when he told me to meet me at the square. So there's like a cloudiness to the whole affair.
Yeah. Which, you know, if she had a fully formed like frontal lobe, she would have like, that's shenanigans, right? There's something wrong here. But I can kind of see her not picking up on it because, again, she is the head in clouds type. Like, she is not, like, she doesn't pick up on the details like that. My frustration mainly lies with Bachman, who also received a letter from her saying, I can't deal with your mom anymore. We're done. He, as someone who has been dealing with his mom for his entire life, in my mind, should have known better.
I can understand his from his perspective though, because it's like he doesn't want his future wife to deal with the burden of like taking care of his mom for the rest of their married life. And you know, like I feel like he was always really afraid of this actually happening. So when it actually happens, he is kind of resigned to it. It's like, okay, finally, like, yeah. So I can understand, but also I'm like, why are you guys meeting at a freaking town square? Like, meet in person, meet her at her house. Like, why are you meeting at,
or meet at the government office,
or
like,
meet
just,
at the government
you know?
office? Like, why? Why the whole like meet at the town square? And I freaking
because they're dumb kids who love romance, right? They're dumb kids who want the romantic.
They read
like,
too many
gestures
novels
and
too many foreign novels at Mr. Fakhri's shop. But like, I freaking knew that like he was waiting at a different town square, or like he wasn't gonna like show up because there's like this side character in the background where when they're like walking past the specific square, there's this old lady who's dressed in red, and you know, she was waiting for her lover for them to like elope, and he never showed up. So I'm like, it's gonna happen to Roya. I just freaking know. But let's just enjoy the good parts for now.
Yeah. And like, okay, let's skip ahead to, we eventually find out that like way later, like literally the second to last chapter, that the letters were altered, right? Like the letter that he sent telling her where to meet him was altered. And the subsequent letter where they broke up with each other were forged altogether. And, you know, Bachman has suspicions on who did it, right? And he kind of knows at this point his mom's story. So he understands like the reasons why, like, so we find out that Mr. Fakhri, the stationery shop owner, and Badri, Bachman's mother, had a history, and they had their own kind of love between classes back in like late 1800s Tehran. And he had stood her up because she was a melon slicer's daughter in the local bazaar, and he was the son of like was it diplomats or like some sort of like
I don't know what his actual family did, but his family wanted him to be a religious scholar, so he had the best education, right. And they had high hopes for him.
And he had kind of left her to do what his family wanted him to do. And we later find out that he left her with a child that she ended up having to
Abort.
what's right, euthanize. Like, it wasn't an abortion, right? It was she killed them after.
Actually, we don't know because it doesn't go into specifics, but we do know that the process damaged her reproductive organs, and it was really hard for her to give birth in the future in her marriage, and she had like a string of miscarriages because of that, or stillborn births, or like she had like one baby who survived for maybe like a year and perished afterwards. So yeah, she had a really traumatic time as a mother early on,
which colors in her interactions with Mr. Thackeray at the engagement party, which like she blames him for A, what happens to her, and B, for like messing with her life once again by setting her son up with like this true, quote unquote, true love when they were supposed to be true love.
I will say I was really surprised by the chapter when it goes back in time even further, and it's written everything is written in like third person view, but like you kind of get Mr. Thackeray's perspective. It's kind of like written it from his viewpoint as him being like the protagonist for this chapter. And I was like, huh. I mean, it was like in the middle of the book, so I was like, whoa, like why are we jumping back in time like this? And also in the beginning, like, Mr. Thackeray is like this I wouldn't say like super charming bookshop owner, but he is someone who, fosters.
Yeah, he's a kindly old man.
Yeah,
right?
like he's like encouraging the young students of Tehran to like seek out foreign books, to learn about democracy. He's kind of like the hub for political activists. And he also passes along love letters to other couples. So he's kind of like a matchmaker in a way. And you kind of have a really positive view of Mr. Thackeray, but then that chapter happens and I'm like, ooh, I don't know. I cannot redeem him at all because he's like in his 20s and Badri is 14 years old. And yeah, and they have sexual relations, and he tries to do the right thing of, oh, I want to marry this girl who, is in the working class and doesn't know how to read or write. And, his dad laughs, and that's it. He marries the girl that his family set him up with. He doesn't stand up to his family, and it's just like, wow, you're a horrible person. You did that to a child.
And that does color like Badri's reaction to her son's relationship. But like at the same time, she ends up doing the same thing to him, right? And like the cycle repeats, right?
Yeah, I mean, she, like, pretty much what happens is that she ends up getting married to Bahman's father, who is an engineer, who comes from a wealthier, more prestigious background. And she has managed to climb out of, like, she wasn't, like, impoverished, but she was able to climb up and be in a class where they have, like, a villa and be able to like live in the most desirable neighborhood in the city. And that's pretty much like what life has taught her, being like, you have to marry within the same class in order to maintain wealth. And she's like, okay, well, I want the best for my son. And it's like, I can't even blame her for thinking that way because of the way Mr. Thackeray like treated her, and no one else has taught her better, like she was so young.
Yeah. And granted, like, different time, different values. This is still a time when children were considered their parents' property to do with what they will, especially in like these upper classes. But like, it made it really hard. I know some people because of this, like really sympathize. Like we're on her side. Like she didn't do anything wrong, but she did.
No, I mean,
do
yeah,
a
she
lot of
was
things
she
wrong,
was a
right?
nasty piece of work. I mean, as someone who, married up, she should have had more like sympathy for like empathy for Roya, but she was just like, no, you're not good enough for my son. And it's like, wow, way to be a girl's girl, Badri.
And I feel like part of me wished that her mental health struggles wasn't such a big part of her character as well, right? Because like if it was just like a girl bossing so hard, like I think that I don't know. I feel like the blaming it on mental health kind of.
I don't think it's blaming it on mental health, but it complicates things, It's like she's a bad person who did bad things and she's very self-centered. However, she has mental health issues and it's really unfair to her son and her husband who, are doing their best to make her life easier.
Because we do find out that the reason why Bachman was in hiding, was laying low during that summer, was not because of political unrest, but because his mother was
suicidal,
threatened to kill herself, right?
Yeah, like she showed up at Mr. Fakhri's shop and she's like, you owe me and like you ruined my life. And she has a knife and she like is about to slice her throat, but they are able to stop her in time. And, from like a recommendations from a doctor, Jahangar's father, they're like, you need to like remove her and, take her to a safe place so she could probably, return to a calmer state, remove her from stressors. And, she is a self-centered person. So she's saying like, oh, if you decide to marry Roya, I'm going to kill myself. And that is a very like manipulative, narcissistic thing to do. I don't think it has anything to do.
Narcissistic. Yeah.
I don't think it has anything to do with her like bipolar disorder or like her borderline personality disorder. I can't really give her a diagnosis as like, she's a fictional character and there's not enough information and I'm not a professional. But I'm like, that has nothing to do with her being a self-centered, narcissistic parent who is being manipulative to her son. It's just like an added on bonus and it's unfortunate.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, it's in addition to like, it's not just she's manipulative and narcissistic, but also the fact that like he can't leave her because he also knows that there's something else going on with her too, that he is just like, as a son and as someone who understands now that he was not the first child, right? He's just the one that survived, that he can't let that go. But like, I just feel like in real life, I know people who like had to get out of situations where their partner was this exact type of narcissistic, threatening self-harm if they ever left them. And it was just like, it's
not love. It's not like, it's not true love when someone threatens you with, pain like that, being like, oh, if I kill myself, you're going to live with the guilt. And it's just very narcissistic, very manipulative. And, there are people like that who do have mental health issues and who do use it to, twist and get people to do what they want. But at the same time, there are people out there with mental health issues, like me, for example, who don't threaten people to do whatever I say. And, I feel like if she had therapy, she would still be a horrible person.
Yeah, I think there was shades of that even at the beginning.
Yeah, when she's like a 14-year-old girl and she's just like Ms. Bossy Pants, and I'm like, she's like feisty, and I'm like, yeah, that's great. But also, I don't know, you kind of see that selfishness very early on.
Yeah, I think that's the reason why, like, while I can understand her struggles, I can't, like, I don't find myself taking her side or like kind of say, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like, that still doesn't make sense. Like, it makes sense why someone like you would do something like this, but it's not going to get me to like, oh, I understand, it's okay. Right?
I mean, okay, here's the thing. Like, she's in a marriage where her husband stood up to his family and broke traditional norms and was willing to, depart from his family to, focus all of his attention and love to the family that he's about to create with his wife. And he seems like he's really in love with Badri, but I feel like with Badri, it was just a strategy for her. Like, I feel like there was no or very little love involved because otherwise she would understand like Roya and Bahman's like romance. You know, like it's like, oh, it's a love match, but I just feel like she's not in a marriage where she actually loves her husband. So
okay, then and here's where we get back to the theme of destiny, right? Because it really seems like what the book is trying to tell us is her one true love
was Mr. Fakhri.
Was always Mr. Fakhri, right?
I hate it. I hate it.
And, you know, and Roya's one true love was always Mr. Bachman. Like, sorry, Mr. Aslan. Sorry, Walter, who's like, just, you know, he's not perfect, right? He does have white male privilege that is seeps in everything he does. But he also, like Mr. Aslan, is there for his wife and like wants to like, you know, make the best of this like life with this woman that he loves, right? But yeah, the fact that like, yeah, like it seems like this the main theme of this story is like the person that you love when you're a teen, they're the one for you.
Your first love is always the one for you. Your first love, you can't forget them, and your first love shapes the rest of your future. And I mean, to a certain extent, yeah, because her first love with Bahman, it really shapes how she enters her relationship with Walter. She's like more careful, more guarded, and just really she seeks that stability. And Walter has it, you know, like she's like, he's never gonna leave. He has my back, and that's great and all, but it sucks that like she was kind of driven to this vulnerable state from this trauma in order to find Walter. But
I did like Walter as like he's I think your ideal of like white guy who marries brown woman, right? Like open to her culture, interested in trying her food, wants to share in your traditions, compared to like, you know, Zari. Like, so after the coup, right? Roya and her sister Zari are sent to California on this program as exchange students, and that's how they end up in the States. And they both meet like white guys to marry. I did love how Zari just like tamed this like more terrible white guy, Jack.
Yeah.
Yeah, from like a guy who like was very dismissive of everything, just like your typical like American exceptionalism white dude who's like a poet and an artist, and she like turned him into like a corporate shill. I thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah. Time changes us all, you know, priorities change. And yeah. But I was like, really? Sorry? Like this guy who's like, oh, the only Persian food that's like worth eating is kebab, and like doesn't really, you know, seem to be all that interested in their culture. I'm just like, why?
But she bends him to her will. I think that's why I think Zari is one of my favorite characters in this book, because she does not let life dictate what she does. Like she doesn't let anything boss her around. Like she, like unlike Roya, who is like at the whims of history, at the whims of life, like she takes life by the horns and like makes it what she wants it to be.
Yeah.
Right?
Very strong personality. What did you think about Walter's family? Like Alice and Patricia, his sister.
I mean, I felt bad that Roya, even outside of Iran, still was at the whims of her in-laws. You know, they did give them kind of more of a sympathetic tone after Roya herself suffers like child loss, right? And that part was really hard to read as a new parent too. It's like, oh man, this sucks for her. It's just interesting. Again, it's like Walter as like the parallels Mr. Aslan, right? The person who broke with the expectations of his family to pursue what he believed was his true love and doing something that wasn't expected of him. Even though he himself, like Walter himself, was also the golden child of his family, and his sister was like really upset that he ended up marrying a Persian girl.
Yeah, she always expected him to marry a wasp, you know, like a nice, typical from a well-to-do family in New England. You know, they could go to the Hamptons and whatever. Okay, but here's the thing. Like, when Patricia came into the picture, you know, she's like really rude to Roya. She's very like dismissive of her culture, and she really makes Roya feel like she is an outsider. And
she kept her shoes on. That was, you know, day one.
Like she was such a bitch. Like, and I was just like, this girl needs to go. Like, he needs to cut off his toxic sister. Like, you need to nip this in the bud. And it turns out, like, later on, like, after Roya, like, loses her child, she, like, Patricia, like, she goes to, like, a Persian store and, like, gets the things that are symbolic to Persian New Year. And I'm like, wow, she, like, went through the effort of, you know, and went through the effort of learning about her culture and like getting these really hard to find things. And I was like, okay, redemption. Maybe don't be too harsh on her.
I mean, though, but the fact that it takes personal, like,
but that's what it is.
Major tragedy to like trigger that empathy, right? Like,
sometimes that's what it takes.
I guess, but I mean, I guess for me, I'm surprised I find myself on this side of the debate, like being very slow to forgive people who like, or like, you know, being asshole for like most of your life. Like, being nice one time doesn't like absolve you of that.
But it feels like it's like a new beginning, you know, like it's a start of them bonding because they talk after that incident. And I mean, they talk after, like, she brings over the New Year things and they seem to bond. And, you know, like, I feel like if you give people a chance to redeem themselves, then they're, you know, if they rise to the occasion, then they can. And I was, like, pleasantly surprised by Patricia. I was like, wow. Alice, though, Walter's mom, not impressed. Like, I mean, this is a terrible thing to say, but like, I can't wait until she dies because, like,
I mean, time goes on, right? She's probably dead by the end of the book anyways.
Like, I like white. She's like, I don't want to eat Persian food. I do not care about your culture. And she's like a nice enough mother-in-law, definitely better than Badri, but it's still very much like you're an outsider.
Okay, speaking of the March of Time, I did feel like because Badri's story was such, like, they did have a focus on it, like, especially in the middle of the book, right? I was a little disappointed that we did not get any closure from that story, like any reflection, any catharsis. I get that that's not what the story is about, but part of me really want to see, like, at the end of her life, was she happy with the choices she made, right? And even if it was like, I made all the right choices, look at how successful my son is, at least we would see that she died still a terrible person.
I mean,
right?
that's just life, you know?
Yeah.
You know, like, later on in the chapters, we get Bahman's, like, letters that he never sent to Roya because he doesn't even know where she is at this time. I mean, he knows that she's in California for her education, but he's, you know, he's like, they're connected through their mutual friend. It's like, what do you do when, like, you get married, like, shortly after breaking up with your former fiance? Like, it's just awkward.
I guess I kind of wish, again, this is like just me probably nitpicking on the form, I kind of wish these letters didn't come out until after their reunion, because the fact that it gives away that he had his own misunderstanding, like the fact that this, like, it confirmed that it was a misunderstanding, or like there's some like manipulation going on in the middle of the book, really colored like the rest of the book for me in terms of, like, I thought these characters were smarter, right? The fact that he says, why did you write me that letter saying that you were done with my mother? And it's like, we know that she never wrote that letter. And so now we know there's manipulation going on here, right?
I do like how it was kind of ambiguous, because it's like, oh yeah, like, his mother's definitely involved, but she was with him the entire time at the villa. So who's the one who, like, forged the letters? it's like it could have been Mr. Fakri, it could have been Jahangir, who, you know, turns out to be in love with Bahman, which was very obvious from the get-go. I don't know if you felt those vibes.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, he's definitely gay and in love with Bahman, because like who wouldn't fall in love with Bahman? He's like the golden boy, the boy who's going to change the world and all that jazz. So but it's like it's ambiguous until like the epilogue, which I really did like.
Yeah. And okay, the whole sequence of events that took Roya to Bachman's stationery store in like Newton, it felt very Deus Ex Machina, right? Like, oh, this woman at this big bookstore just happened to tell her about this mom and pop stationery store that just happened to be run by the son of her one true love. I guess that this is like, you know, this is where like the
destiny part comes
the
in.
Nicholas Sparks of it all, right? Like the notebook of it all comes in. It's like, oh yeah, that destiny part of it. Like they're always meant to find each other again.
I do love like it played like a movie to me when when 77-year-old Roya steps into this stationery shop in Newton, and she's like flooded with memories of when she was back in the stationery shop in Tehran. And I'm like, yeah, there's like something very, you know, tactile about being in a small bookstore, and you have like books and like parchment and ink. I don't know. It's just like very like nostalgic, you know, especially now where everything is like typed up with like smartphones and everything. So it's like there's like romance when it comes to penmanship and physical books. So I really like that scene, and I freaking knew that it was gonna be Bahman's son, because of course it was gonna be like destiny, like we said. I really like Claire though. I really liked how you know, we're introduced to her as someone who has, you know, who's pretty much an orphan and kind of has like lived life very passively, but her bright spot in life is taking care of these old people at the nursing home who has lived full lives, and she's able to listen to their stories, and Bahman is able to, you know, tell her all of these stories about his youth in Tehran, and, you know, she like the oral tradition of it all. Like I really loved it. I loved the relationship between Claire and Bahman, and the relationship that Claire forms with Roya.
Yeah, it does make sense that, because when you're first introduced to Claire, she's like the admin of this nursing home who seems very invested in the two of them meeting, and you later find out it's because she knows all about you.
I mean, wouldn't you be invested when there's like an epic love story and it's like, oh man, like they didn't show up and they were supposed to be married, and I wonder what the mystery behind like the misunderstanding is, you know?
Yeah. And then to be met with even more misunderstanding, right? Because that reunion scene was actually pretty comical, because he is confused because she is saying things that doesn't make sense, and she thinks he's just getting old.
Oh my God. I was so scared when that chapter showed up. I was like, no, more misunderstanding. Like, what if it ends like this? What if he dies and she thinks that he was just like raving because of his Parkinson's and dementia? It's just... what's going to happen? So when his final letter to her explaining everything came up, I was like, oh, thank God. I like cannot deal with any more like misunderstandings and stuff like that. It's just like, I can't.
I know. I think, you know, thinking about it, what really made it frustrating for me is the fact that, like, you know, most rom-coms, the misunderstandings last days, maybe weeks, right? But this is a misunderstanding that lasted like 60 years. Like, I can't imagine being hung up on a misunderstanding for 60 years, right?
Yeah. And, you know, I love this idea of time feeling circular to Roya, because she's someone who feels things so deeply. I mean, any mother who has lost a child, they're like, that pain is always going to be raw to them. But like, you know, to her, she's like always carrying that pain in a way where it feels like so present. And when she meets Bobmon again after like 60 years, she's like, I'm 17 again. And, you know, this idea of her 77-year-old self and her 17-year-old self are just the same person, like time being circular. I was like, oh, wow, that's like, you know, I think that's just a lovely notion that you can be multitude of things and all these selves that you think. It's kind of like Doctor Who in a way, right? Like when you like regenerate, you're a different person, but all of those different versions of you like still exist. But I was scared that like, you know, like after she comes back to the care center and Bachman is on his deathbed, is it going to be a Notebook situation where they both die in bed? It's like, I can't deal with this. Like Walter does not deserve this.
I know. I was the entire time thinking, what about Walter? Like, you should talk to him. No.
I mean, like she was pretty honest with him, though. She was like, oh, like this was my first love. I'm going to go see him. I'm going to go to his funeral. And he was very understanding about it.
To his credit, he is very like, you know, the same with like Arthur from Past Lives, right? Like, just like he understands there's nothing he can do to stop her. And he doesn't want to stop her because that would make him a bad husband. Like he needs her to do what's best for her. And I think, you know, green flags are Walter mostly, right? There's a couple of times where he kind of has some like, you know, innate masculinity issues, but like for the most part, he, like Mr. Aslan, is like probably the best possible partner for their wives to have ended up with.
Yeah, yeah. And he's the best you could ask for, you know, in those circumstances. And they did go through like a rough patch in their marriage because Roya, she was kind of done with childbirth after the loss of Marigold. And he's like, well, it's been a number of years. Like we should, you know, I want to be a parent. And she's like, no, I can't. I just like can't do it. And, you know, they're able to have Kyle, their son, when they're in their 40s. So it kind of is like a miraculous thing for them as a couple. But
yeah, although as someone who did have children in his 40s, our bodies they're not built for this.
As a fellow dad of twins, felt for Bachman, right?
I did feel for him. I mean, it's not easy having two infants at the same time. And I can see how, like, honestly, once you become a parent, like the kids become your life. And I can see how chasing this destiny kind of fell to the back burner, right? Like, because your immediate priority is making sure that your children are A, alive, and B, growing up well, right? And especially in Iran during that time, which is like, you know, after the 1957 coup d'etat and leading up to the 1979 revolution, like it was not a time of stability and peace. It's not like, it was not the Iran that we saw at the beginning of the book, right?
Yeah. And I do love how Bachman and Roya, like their dreams when they were teenagers, they didn't come into fruition, but that doesn't make their life sad. I mean, it's sad that like their romance didn't work out, but they lived full lives, you know? They, like Roya got her education. She like lived in America and she was able to start a family. And unfortunately, because of the racist, sexist times of the 50s, like she wasn't able to become the lady scientist that her dad and herself like wanted her to be. But, you know, like I said, she lived a full life. Like it wasn't as if everything went downhill for her after her engagement didn't work out. And the same thing with Bachman, even though he is pining for Roya, he had children and he like, unfortunately, he became a cog in the system. He worked for an oil company and he's become like disillusioned with the government. But at the time, like so many people were disillusioned with the government. Like there was really not much he could do. So it's understandable. But like when he becomes like an old person, like you see him helping out other people. Like he's still generous and he's still he reads everything about therapy and mental health stuff. So it's just like he still tried to change the world in small ways when he was older. So Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they lived full lives, but at the same time, they're also very sad the entire time they were doing it because they weren't with each other, right?
I mean, that's life though. Don't you have like regrets? Don't you have like, don't you have like what if moments in your life? And that's, that I feel like that's natural. But at the same time, life goes on. You have to adapt. So yeah. I think there's a line in the book when Roya says like, oh, like Bahman was a tiny shard in my long life. And it's like, yeah.
A tiny shard, but like it's lodged into a very key part of her brain, I feel like, because she can't seem to shake it. I think it just comes back to like, the book is very, very keen on like pursuing this idea that like they're always meant to be each other. Even though they're not together, they're always meant to be with each other.
Which I am totally not for. I feel like even if they met at the square and they went through the marriage, I just feel like they would have had a really hard life.
Because if there's one thing I know is true about this book, is that Badri Aslan always wins. Right? If there's one winner in this book, it's Bahman's mother, who got everything she wanted.
And made everyone else miserable.
In the end.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I really liked the epilogue. I liked how it was in Mr. Fakhri's perspective. I mean, again, it's written in third person. And, he tries to do the right thing. And, we already know that he dies in Roya's arms, pretty much. And it kind of, the book ends with kind of like his stream of consciousness. And, I don't know if he sees his stationery shop burning, but, like he thinks that, that love, like, I don't know, like his legacy will continue. And it's, I don't know, like I really liked how it was a stream of consciousness at the very end. Like there was just like, there's like no commas. It's very like, it's just a rush of words, a rush of thoughts, and then it just ends. And actually, like after I read the epilogue, I went straight back to the first chapter of the book. And I feel like the real ending of the book is the first chapter, which works really well with like the idea of time being circular. I'll just like read like the like part of the last passage. He looks in the direction of a stationery shop, the one he built to make up for his sins, to spread knowledge, to nurture love, and he thinks he sees smoke, but he's sure it's not that. It will live on. People will walk into his stationery shop even after he is gone. He doesn't know how, but he knows there will be someone who will not let it go, someone will keep it going. He is disappearing. He is shrinking. The sky is becoming darker. The curtains are drawing close from either side. He is leaving, but the love will continue to live. The young will continue their hope. The fight for democracy won't die. His books, the words, the notes, the letters, the hope cannot ever end. It is a love from which we never recover. And I just feel like it was such a beautiful way to end the book. I feel like the whole book was like a painting, very rich, very, I don't know. It was like walking through a fairy tale or dream for half of it. Very nostalgic.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think, it goes with the themes of this book, which is like not just destiny, but like, yeah, the nostalgia, right? The fact that like we're all a sum total of our experiences. Like everything that we go through, the good and the bad, forms not only who we are, but the decisions that we make. And, like that stationery store was a formative part of both Roya and Bahman. And that connection to the stationery shop, right? That connection to, the vibes of the place kind of lead them back together like 60 years in the future. And, there's something to be said about that. Like for a book about destiny and true love, like, I do admit that is a sweet concept. I just like, I wish one of them fought harder for their relationship. That would have made the whole thing like work better for me. But in terms of like a historical fiction of not just Roya growing up in the time and place, but also her experience like being displaced, going to another country, her experience as like an exchange student who, ends up settling in the States. I thought all that was really really beautifully written. And, there is this like constant sense of melancholy, right? Like looking back is just melancholy. Like we're always wistful for the people we were or the experience that we had back then. So I think Marjan captures that really, really well. I think for me, I think personally, this just like solidifies my own kind of preconceptions about second chance romance and like what it needs to have for it to work for me.
Yeah. And also like I'm in the firm belief where it wouldn't have worked out. There's absolutely no way. Like I feel like Baudry would have broken them down and they would have just become empty shells or resentful of each other. They were so young and I don't really think they knew how hard it was going to be. So I don't, and the fact that they didn't fight harder, like you said, like just makes me think that they weren't meant for each other.
Yeah, because she still faced the same issues with like Patricia, but I feel like Walter would have had no qualms like cutting her off if it came down to it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I mean, he was able to like stand up to her when she was like, "When are you gonna have a baby?" That's all. Women should have babies, even though she is a spinster and she pursued her career in finance, and it's like she's kind of projecting her own desires onto Walter, but it's just like he stood up to her, being like, "We'll have a baby when we want to have a baby. Stop bringing up this subject." And I'm like, "Yes, Walter, yes, stand up for your wife."
The best boy. I love that he was described as Tintin-like because he gave me a visual of what Walter looks like. Sweater vest, kind of tufted hair.
Yeah, yeah. And I do love how the New England stereotype of like, they could be rough around the edges, very blunt, but they're kind underneath it all.
Yeah. All right. Well, with that, that'll do it for our discussion of The Stationery Shop by Marjan Kamali. If you have any thoughts on either our discussion or the book itself, please let us know either on Discord or on our Goodreads forums. As always, we'd love to hear your feedback on our podcast whenever possible. I guess before we go, for our book club pick for April, of course, it is our quarterly Patron's Choice. So, Rira, can you let us know what our patrons have suggested for us to read for April 2025?
So, first off, thank you to Cherry, our Patreon member who recommended this book. And we will be reading The Cartographers by Peng Shepherd. And it was a finalist for the LA Times Book Prize. And it is about a young woman who discovers that a strange map in her deceased father's belongings holds an incredible, deadly secret, one that will lead her on an extraordinary adventure and to the truth about her family's dark history. So there is obviously mystery there, and there is a little bit of fantasy from what people are saying in the reviews.
And as someone who just really loves maps, I'm really looking forward to some map-based murder mystery action. So I'm looking forward to discussing this with you at the end of the month. As always, we will be posting our reading schedule on Discord, so read along with us there if you're a Patreon supporter. And if not, you can also let us know your thoughts about the book on our Goodreads forums so that we can also include your feedback in our discussion on the podcast. But with that, that'll do it for this episode of Books and Boba. Thank you so much for joining us for our discussion of The Stationery Shop by Marjan Kamali. We'll see you all next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Books and Boba. This podcast was hosted by Marvin Yue and Rira Yu and edited and produced by Marvin Yue. Follow the book club on Twitter and Instagram by going to @BooksandBoba and engage with us on Goodreads on our Goodreads group. You can also check out past episodes of the podcast by going to booksandboba.com and by subscribing to us on your favorite podcast app. Don't forget, you can support Books and Boba and Asian American authors by purchasing books at our bookshop.org account. Check out the link in our show notes and also at booksandboba.com. Books and Boba is a proud member of the Potluck Podcast Collective, a collective of Asian American hosted podcasts featuring unique voices and stories from the Asian diaspora. Learn more about the collective and check out our fellow Potluck shows by visiting the website podcastpotluck.com. Thanks for listening.
co-host the podcast Asians in Baseball alongside Naomi Ko and Scott Okamoto. Asians in Baseball is exactly what it sounds like, a podcast about the Asian and Asian Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander Americans in Major League Baseball. Every week, we break down the highlights of what's going on with Asians in baseball and then take a deeper dive into the Asian and Asian Americans past and present who have shaped baseball as it is today. Whether you're Kim Ng's #1 fan or you've never even heard of Hideo Nomo, we've got something for everyone, especially for the Shohei Ohtani stans. Maybe too much for the Shohei Ohtani stans. Listen to Asians in Baseball wherever you get podcasts, part of the Potluck Podcast Collective.